Welcome to the Vybrant Life Podcast, where we explore how to live with energy, purpose, and intention. I'm your host, Joshua Haig, a holistic lifestyle performance and success coach with a background in professional sports and 2 decades of coaching experience. Each week, I get to sit down with experts across a multitude of fields, including wellness, finance, and personal growth, to uncover practical strategies that help you thrive in every area of life. Let's dive in and help you live your most vibrant life. Today's episode is all about burnout prevention, women's health. I'm so excited to welcome Daniela Wolfe onto the podcast. Daniela, welcome.
Thanks so much, Josh. It's so great to talk again.
Good. Yeah, I thoroughly, for those of you who have not listened yet, I thoroughly enjoyed the last time we got to sit down. I sat down on Daniela's podcast, The Best D Life, and it's wonderful speaking just health and wellness and bringing a little bit more color to people's lives. That's what we're here for, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us just a little bit. I glazed over it, but tell us a little bit about it. You are a burnout prevention specialist. A licensed master's social worker, and that's been for 30 years.
Yep.
And then, of course, a professional hot mess. I told you I was going to put it.
Yeah.
Tell us about it, your background, your experiences, your expertise. Fill us in.
Sure. So like you said, been a social worker for almost 30 years, so I'm clinically trained in everything, mindfulness, stress management, coping skills, all those types of things, as well as I'm a mom of 2. And so as far as the professional hot mess, I've unfortunately also put myself through my own burnout. About 20 years ago, when my kids were younger, they were 4 and 6 months old, I went through a divorce and I was trying to just do it all, be it all. I'm an overachiever. I wanted to prove I was capable. I had some negative limiting beliefs, that I told myself as far as what I assumed people would think if I wasn't managing it all, if I wasn't, doing all the things. And I also, unfortunately, was snapping. I was irritable. I wasn't showing up as my best self. And I, had this moment, we had this huge surprise October storm without power for 5 days, all these kind of things. And I was like, this is not how I want to keep living my life. This isn't who I want my kids to know. This isn't how I want them to remember me. Those types of things. And so I started kind of practicing what I preach, because a lot of times we're great at helping other people and forget to turn that on ourselves. And so I started super small, simple gratitude practice, listing 3 to 5 things every day I was grateful for. At the time, our grocery store, Love Wegmans, had free childcare. So I started using that, as well as joined a gym that had free childcare. And just these small little shifts and pivots, I realized not only was I showing up better, but my kids were too. They were excited to come tell me who they met, what they did. And, people say self-care, it's about not just yourself, but everybody around you. And it really was. I was showing up for work differently. I was showing up with my friends differently. And they were not only asking me what I was doing, how they could do that, but reaching out and showing me moments that they maybe did something different, took time for themselves because of something I said or did. And I realized I think we're all looking for that validation and permission, that it's okay to take time for ourselves, that we need to do that. And so that's kind of my story and journey a little bit about then how I've kind of now taken this to help as many people as I possibly can.
How long have you been doing the burnout coaching?
About 5 years.
5 years. Awesome. What do you, in terms of let's face it, we all go through it at different phases, especially as an entrepreneur. I've seen clients go through it with fitness specifically. We call it a plateau, but basically you're burnt out, whether it's results driven or your effort level. What do you see from the people that you've worked with, the clients, all of that? What do you see as the biggest, 1 or 2 hurdles that really drive them directly to burnout? What I mean by that is like the things that are getting them there.
Definitely, I think kind of our mindset, which is one of the first areas I help people with, is one of those areas that can set us up for failure. Whether, we all have different stories, different backgrounds, different things we tell ourselves, whether it's, like I said, in my situation, I had to kind of do it all, be it all, prove that I could in order to be viewed positively, to be viewed as successful. Some people buy into that hustle culture. Some people, think they have to work 20 hours and hustle harder to get ahead. With workouts, you probably, have probably run into people again where it's not their ability, it's the mindset and the way they're thinking about it and the way they're approaching it that is setting them up for failure. The second piece I would say is then kind of how they're setting themselves up for success each day. We can tell ourselves all these great stories, but until we start doing the things, taking the time, putting ourselves at the top of our priority list and really prioritizing our self-care, not just as something nice to have or something fluffy, but a necessity like eating and sleeping every day and brushing our teeth. Self-care needs to be done on a daily basis. You wouldn't
Right.
eat on Sunday and think you're not going to be starving on Tuesday. You
Right.
can't do self-care on Saturday and think you're good for the week.
I think I have two coaching statements to that. A, especially speaking to you, mother of two, I see women naturally, especially in the mother role, playing the sacrifice card. Everything's for the children, putting them first, but you can't pour from an empty cup. Right.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I feel like men just don't talk about it personally. The burnout phase, the attitude of you're invincible and you just have to do more. You got to get more work done. I run into this 9:30 at night. I come home from clients and I'm trying to force down more work. How do you, well, my question would be, how do you coach men and women differently?
Not necessarily differently. Like you said, I think they come to me with different things, different backgrounds, different kind of stories they're telling themselves. And so unpacking that and helping them reframe and change the narrative is definitely that first piece across the board. You know, like you said, definitely women, unfortunately, for whatever reason, we carry the invisible load of our households, the things that nobody talks about, but magically are always done. There's always a grocery list, you know, when the birthday parties are and all those kind of things. Even when guys try and help, and no offense, guys, but you know, you might take that last task of maybe like, yeah, I'll
And
drop the
make
kid
it
off at the
harder.
party. Well, not even that, you know, but it's like just taking a piece of it versus the whole thing. I think and for the example that you gave, you know, you'll come home at the end of a day of training and then you try and do more work. Sometimes we don't even realize it's our passions that can set us up for burnout, even more so than the things we don't like. You know, if I didn't like something I was doing, as soon as my time was up, I'd be like, bye, I'm out of here. You know, where it's our passions, we go all in, we throw our boundaries out the window. Boundaries is one of my favorite B words. And so having those boundaries in place and being comfortable, not only putting them in place, but communicating them and sticking to them. Because when we don't have boundaries, you know, we're spending all of our time in something, we're going all in, whether it's a business, your kids, or a relationship even. I can remember a mom friend saying, you know, I was her first adult conversation in like a day and a half because she was just all in on her kids. You know, you think if you're in a new relationship, sometimes you might kind of be like, I'm not making plans with my friends because I want to be with this person all the time. It throws our balance off, you know, and that work-life balance, work-life harmony requires not just focusing on one thing to take care of ourselves, but there's a couple of things. Specifically, I focus on 8 pillars of things that we need to incorporate every single day in order to help take care of ourselves.
What are those 8 pillars? I was like, I'm in. Teach me.
So we're talking about self-care.
So what's funny is I coach 5 pillars of fitness, right? Sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress, and then social. You could say circle or acuity, whatever you want to say. That's my health and fitness side of things. Teach me something new. What are the 8? I'm going to take notes.
Absolutely. So it's everything from how you eat, how you sleep, move, how you dress, how you decorate and organize your home, how you think about money, how you connect with others, and as well as then that traditional kind of personal development, mindfulness, gratitude practices, you know, meditation, those types of things. And so those 8 areas together, you kind of roll through them throughout your day. You don't even realize it sometimes. But when we start to get intentional and we start to put the focus then on those things, we see not only how powerful they can be in micro moments, as little as 1 minute even, in different moments throughout your day, but also how they work together in synchronicity. You think about, you know, if you're stressed about money, you might not get a good night's sleep. If I don't get a good night's sleep, I'm going to crave carbs and I'm not going to eat as well the next day. And maybe then I might not do as much movement or things like that because I'm a little more sluggish, as well as I get cranky. And then I'm going to snap at the people around me. My relationships are going to be affected as well. And so you see, when you start to neglect one area, it can snowball into so many other pieces of your day.
What do you feel the most actionable bucket is for people? Because obviously we all approach our lives from a different lens and everyone goes through different things at different times. But what do you feel when you're coaching with people and, you know, for those listening, if they're really thinking about making a change for themselves for the better, what do you feel the first or most actionable item is for them to start to take these steps forward for a better life?
Like I said, you know, definitely we look at your mindset first, because when you think differently, you feel differently. When you feel differently, you act differently. And then when you act differently, you know, you have a different outcome. So we have to change the way we're thinking, because you can check the boxes, do the things. I had someone say to me once, they're like, I'm going to do yoga, I'm doing all the things, I'm checking the boxes, and I still don't feel any differently, because while they're doing those things, they're still running through their to-do list, or they have that, the
Hmm.
guilt in their head of what they assume people are thinking about them, or all these types of things. So unless you start to kind of silence those conversations and voices in your head, I call mine the mean girls, like we talk to ourselves more than we talk to anybody else in our whole entire life. And yet we're never as kind as we would be to a
Hmm.
friend. So starting that mindset shift, even super small, take one step at a time. You can't redo your whole kind of upbringing and things like that. But you want to at least
Right.
start small. And then it's the same with the other areas, your time planning and your self care. You start small, you start actionable, and you slowly build and create these micro moments and new systems, new routines, to the point that then you automate them. Like I said, you could do it as little as 1 minute. When I start people with a 1 minute practice, I have them set a reminder to go off on their phone. And then they set a timer for 1 minute. And during that 1 minute, you're not scrolling, you're not throwing the laundry in, you're doing nothing else but just sitting there, maybe doing some box breathing, maybe doing some mindfulness and focusing maybe on nature outside, or on your senses and the things in your room. You might do some shoulder shrugs, you might drink some water, but just for 1 minute, science has shown, starts to lower your heart rate, lower your cortisol levels. You also get the dopamine hit of, you set a goal and you achieved it. Say you set that reminder now for 5 times to go off throughout your day. Now you have a 5 minute self-care practice. Maybe at the end of 1 minute, you're like, you know what? I got another minute. I'm going to do this a little bit longer. Now you've got a 10-minute self-care practice. And that's where it can slowly build. But then you start to notice so many opportunities. You can integrate mindfulness, just even grabbing your first cup of coffee in the morning and taking 30 seconds to feel the warmth in your hands, to smell it, to taste it, that intentionality.
Hmm.
Like I said, how you dress is part of your self-care. Your confidence level is going to be a little bit differently based on what you're wearing. If you're wearing an oversized sweatshirt and sweatpants, you might not feel as put together as in your sharpest suit and those kind of things. And so just even being aware of what fits you, what looks good on you, those types of things, small little things that you're going to do as
Hmm.
part of your day, you're now slowly building in self-care. And when you take that minute, not even a minute, like a quick pause with that intention to be like, yeah, I look good. Mel Robbins does the high five habit in the mirror, those kind of things. That's where you start to build these micro moments, because self-care isn't about just being calm and zen and relaxed. It's your confidence, it's your energy. And when you showed up with that positive energy, that's contagious.
What do you say? This is the Live Vibrant podcast, right? So I'm trying to help people live a more vibrant life. And the reason I chose Vibrant, it's the thing that I try and bring to each person's home every time I'm training, I'm working with them. I talk to my coaches, my team, about being the
Hmm.
light in the darkness for somebody. You never know what they're going through, what problems they have or things like that. But my counter argument to you, what do you say to the people who scoff at self-reflection, self moments, all these, the woo woo that you're
Yeah.
talking? And because that's a real mentality.
Hmm.
And fortunately enough, have been confronted with all sorts of different types of people through time. They super
Yeah.
successful entrepreneurs, through someone who's trying to figure their life out. There are absolutely those people who are like, I don't need that self routine. Like, let's go, let's keep moving forward. What do you say to them?
Hmm.
How do we get them to understand that there should be an appreciation?
Oh my gosh. I think definitely the science, the fact that this isn't just a lot of woo, there is science behind so many of these practices that people just, again, without understanding it, take as, just being fluffy and all those kind of things. Positive affirmations.
Okay.
People think, oh, that's just, almost like a fake it till you make it. You're just saying positive things. What's really the benefit of that? But you're actually rewiring your brain. You're creating new
Hmm.
neural pathways in your brain.
Hmm.
You're changing the entire way you think when you do these affirmations. And so even though they might sound like, I confident, in my
Yeah.
ability to make a positive difference in the world. And I can say that every single day. But as I slowly ingrain myself in that mentality, it
Right.
changes it changes not only your brain makeup, it changes the neural pathways, it changes the way that you show up, it changes the way you're going
Mm.
to be experiencing events and things like that, because of the way you're thinking about them as well. Like I said, when you think differently, you feel differently. So instead of seeing everything glass half empty, you start seeing it more positively. Instead of people thinking, oh, the system's out to get you. You think I can make a difference in this system,
Right.
those types of things. And so there's so much science that I could probably, throw at somebody who
Mhm.
had those things to help them see more concretely. Because it can be hard with this. People, it's hard to measure. You're not going to lose 10 pounds. You're not going to walk away
Yep.
$10,000 richer necessarily, but your life is going to be transformed in ways you can't even
Altered.
imagine. Absolutely.
So, and when it's just like let's say you and I are going to talk about, Josh, I need to get back into the gym, and I'm going to go, well, go work out. That's what you just told me. I need to do basically care work for mental health. Great. That is such a big umbrella. And I know we said do a minute of work, and that's an intentional moment, right? Enjoy the glass of water, smell the coffee for a second. That's great. But when we actually talk about, you just said affirmations. I know there's journaling, right? That's another one. You could read different things like quotes and things like that. What do you recommend as the one thing to do to help rewire and to help really beyond that intentional moment? It might happen at the same time, but beyond that, just I'm going to smell the coffee for 30 seconds or appreciate the sunshine. That moment, what do you recommend as the one thing that everyone on the call, everyone listening to this should do? What's that thing?
Whatever it is you pick to do it every single day. The consistency is what's going to be where the power comes from, not necessarily how long you have, because you might think like, yeah, what's 30 seconds? What's a minute, but the consistency of it is where you start to then really build that muscle memory. You talked about go work out at the gym if you want to build your physical fitness. This is building your mental fitness. This is building your resilience mentally and emotionally. And so you need the rep, you need that consistency on a day-to-day basis. Like I start my day with movement every single day. Some days are longer and more in depth than others, but the consistency is even if I'm flying super late, I'm going to do a 10-minute yoga and a 5-minute meditation and make it happen either way, and so that consistency is how I start my day. I end my day with an actual book. I might read 3 sentences and fall asleep. I might read 3 paragraphs, but I am consistent with those habits and routines, and that's where you really get the momentum of training your body of this is what I do when I'm relaxed. This is what I do when I'm taking care of myself. So that in times of stress, because we don't think rationally when we're in crisis or stress, you can actually respond rather than react in a way that you're going to regret and have to backpedal from, So that would be my one takeaway is whatever you pick to do, even if it's 30 seconds or a minute, just do it every single day.
Consistency. Sounds like fitness.
Yeah,
It's the simple
it really
things.
is the parallels between mental fitness and physical fitness. It's purpose and buying into it from that same mindset. It's not about, the immediate reactions. You're not going to go to the gym for an hour and come out all bulked and everything like that. You're not going to practice yoga for an hour and come out all zen, but you do it, regularly. You build that resilience. You can bounce back. You build that strength to be able to handle life's ups and downs emotionally, just like you would physically from working out.
Before I ask I had a good question for you. What's your book recommendation? What's the one that I need to get? Because you hit on it. You do reading every night. This would be time for a plug. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Throw yours in.
It's called Balance Breakthrough, a practical guide for busy professionals to take charge of their work life and well-being. And it's a do-it-yourself playbook to walk yourself through these steps in creating your own work-life balance. I walk you through the whole formula.
And for the hard of hearing or me, repeat it one more time. And a little slower.
I'm from New York. I talk fast. Balance Breakthrough, a practical guide for busy professionals to take charge of their work, life, and well-being.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And then,
I'm assuming that are.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, because, it's not all about me. I love Atomic Habits from James Clear.
Oh, yeah.
I love this book, Joyful, by Ingrid Patel Lee. It's like my back thing over here. How people are always searching for happiness, and it's elusive because it's not about finding happy. It's about stacking moments of joy throughout your day.
I'll give you one back. I not plugging my own as I'm finishing my publishing, but The Rhythm of Life by Matthew Kelly. It's a little bit, there's a sprinkle of religion right in the beginning. However, it is not a religious book. It is just, he is a religious person. So he kind of prefaces that. Highly recommend it for you in terms of the balanced lifestyle or the holistic mindset. I think you would absolutely love it.
Awesome. Thank you.
There was that. And then I had a bang up question for you. Oh, the journey that you've been on to come about and be a burnout prevention specialist, but more so a mindset coach, right? What were some of the struggles that you kind of faced and sparked you diving off the deep end into all of this that most likely a lot of my clients, people listening and the average Joe is probably facing without even understanding it. You've just gone through this journey to be like, oh, wait, we need to fix all of this. And so the affirmations and the journaling and the consistency, that's the solution. But what are the
Mhm.
problems we're facing?
I think we're disconnected in a lot of ways. Even when I started my journey, we weren't necessarily in the place we are now. But I think from a coping strategy standpoint, we are very isolated. We're on our devices a lot. We're not connecting the same way we typically do. And so we're spending a lot of time in our heads. And that's where then that mindset can really trip us up, because I would love to think that there's somebody out there that probably is super kind to themselves and doesn't think anything negative, but we all have that little devil on our shoulder that's
100%.
telling us we can't do something, we're not good enough, who are you to think you can be doing this? You're sitting and relaxing, gosh, there's so much to be done. You see people's social media and it's everybody's highlight reel, but you're thinking, holy cow, they've got it all together. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they've got. And I'm sitting here surrounded in my, again, professional hot mess moment. So I think, that's where a lot of the problem comes from, is what we're telling ourselves, the fact that we believe it, and then that we're always on. Again, we have a computer in our pocket. And so we get that ping from our boss. We get that ping, of what's going on socially. I remember when I was a kid, you went home and if something happened that day,
That was it.
nobody else really knew about it. If they called somebody else's house, their parent was right there listening. If your boss wanted something, they had to wait till they saw you the next day because they had no way to get a hold of you. We are on 24/7 emotionally and professionally. And so we don't get that same break to recharge and reset the way we need to.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the youth conversation. How old are your children?
20 and 24. So it's been a journey, and definitely they learned a lot. I found, they do what I do and not what I say. And so they've learned a lot of these strategies, but technology, I think this generation specifically has grown up very differently. I was just reading an article about how technology has changed childhood.
How do you, and this is where this was going, that's why I asked about your kids, their age, they might just be on the other side of kind of the whole thing. How do you help parents? I have a countless number of clients who all have different, we'll call it various ages between 9 and 10 and like 17, 18, 19, where it is just this headache of a problem of everything from not caring about things from such as punishments and taking things away to this oversaturation and this over need to be on phones and electronics to the point where like they won't communicate. They're not higher level function, but like you're seeing loss of like executive function and their ability to prioritize real things. How do you coach parents through that, if you have any parents? And then do you have any great tidbits of little tips or tricks that they could give to their kids? Anything would help, because I definitely run into a problem where it's trying to help these parents through it and understand and also be at peace in their own space, right?
Right. No, I mean, that's what I do as a social worker. I work with high school kids. I've been, that's been my bread and butter. So definitely I've seen huge changes, from when I first started my career in that sense to where we are now. I'm in a school district and seeing the effects that technology has had. The fact that Steve Jobs, I read this book, Irresistible, it's called, and he comments how he never allowed his own kids to have any of their technology, no iPads, no iPhones or anything like that, because he knew how addictive it was. Like, it's intentionally designed to be that way. So the fact that kids are struggling to get off of it is part of how it's designed, and as well as they've also done brain scans to show that, having any kind of screen time changes the way, the heat markers and all those things are lining up in your brain. And it takes about 3 days to kind of reset to be technology free, to kind of go back to our basic way of thinking and our thought process, and because we get all those constant dopamine hits and things like that from the technology. And so kind of how you start the habit is what your family is going to buy into. And it's hard when, they see everybody else doing things and you fight those battles regardless of what it is. Johnny can stay out later, Johnny's allowed to take the car, do these things. So when it comes to technology, to have your own kind of boundaries in place in general, like I said, I love boundaries. And really being honest and having conversations with your kids ahead of time, not only about what you're going to do, but about why, and helping to educate them on what you're doing, why you're doing it. Even a small little thing like we don't keep our phones upstairs when we go to bed at night. They're all on the counter. Mine, my husband's, my kids always were. I mean, now they're adults, they're going to make their own choices. But, that was just one small way. I knew that from 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., they were at least going to be technology free for a little bit, because so many times now kids go to bed with TVs in the room, phones in the room. They use it as their alarm versus a regular alarm clock. And so even just always having that technology near your head, there's so many different things. It's right there. You wake up in the middle of the night, instead of rolling over to fall back asleep, you're picking it up to see what notifications you missed and those kind of things. So just a small little shift of keeping the phones out of the rooms at bedtime, having set technology detox days, or even hours. Maybe no phones at the dinner table, having those tech-free times, maybe not during car rides. You can always have conversations, just finding different moments. Like ours was, you couldn't have it locally. You could only have it on road trips when they were little, again, little things like that, as opposed to always having the TV screen, just driving to the grocery store and all those little things, finding little ways to take those breaks and help them. I was watching on TikTok, this comedian was saying, my whole life was mindfulness growing up because we didn't have phone. You were taking the bus to school, you were looking out the window, mindful. You had to wait somewhere, mindful, because you had nothing else to do,
Right.
And so
you had to be patient.
Yeah. So bringing those moments back in. And like I said, I know it's not an easy thing to do, but to continue to have the conversations, to continue, to look at it from your own usage. Because they're, again, like I said, my kids, they always did what I did and not what I said. How are you using technology? Are they talking to you and you're sitting there on your device? And recognizing that's the model that you're setting for them. And so putting those boundaries in place for you, as well as then maybe adding, because if we don't substitute it, then they're gonna be like, well, now what do we do? So maybe that's
right. And adding. So
you have trivia time in the car. You have, name that tune, different things like that, so that you're showing them how to interact, how to talk, how to engage, those kind of things.
I think it's very interesting. There's the concept of substituting in there. So something I always see is the concept of iPad time, technology time. And the kicker is, it's like I had a young man when I was little, was never allowed to have any sweets. When he came over to our house, when we would play and hang out when I was little, he would destroy our pantry, right? Because it's now you're not allowed to ever really have it, or very little. So now when you get access to it, you don't know how to self-regulate.
Right.
I see that happening with technology now. So I think, because my original question I was going to ask you was, how do you help that regulation? But the answer is you sub things in. The kicker is I see a lot of kids, they just don't care. They okay, you sub in, play piano or have art time or play a game with the family. They just don't care. It's hard. I genuinely don't know how to help parents navigate it.
It takes some time to reset, especially if that's, if you're trying to break the mid-habit versus how you're starting it from the get-go. Trying to undo that habit, it's going to be a hard fight, because you're going to see a different version of your kid for a little bit until you start to really get those habits more ingrained.
Can you explain a little bit on more about the 3-day kind of stopgap? And then realistically, how often should we do that? How often should parents have their kids do that? Because that's a very unique, I have never heard that.
Yeah, I can't even remember where I read it. It was years ago that I saw that, when technology was first starting to really come out, before iPhones were literally in the hands of, 4th and 5th graders. Like, it's so young now compared to even what it used to be. So I'm not even sure exactly. Like, I remember reading the article, and I remember seeing pictures of the brain scans and things like that. And one was all lit up and one, and was more calm and things like that, because again, you weren't getting those constant hits and dysregulation and that type of thing. Does it have to be a hard and fast 3 days? Maybe not. But I think, again, building in those kind of times of just, whether it's family time, bike riding time, different things that don't involve technology all the time. Start small, just like any habit. You're going to do this just like you would any habit. You start small. You're not going to take it away for the entire weekend and be like, poof, you're 3 days out, but by slowly increasing the amount of time that they're tech free, you'll slowly be able to build that in in a more natural way. I know our district next year is going to be phones free, and people are of course freaking out, but I've read, a lot of the schools that have already started to do it around the country, the kids after a couple of weeks are like, you know what, I actually can focus better in class. I actually can pay attention. I am talking to more people and those types of things. So they are seeing some benefit. And, I understand we're conditioned. I used to probably reach out to my kids if I had a random question, or you want to be able to reach them if something scary or bad happens, and it's not about eliminating content or contact altogether, but just giving them that space when they're in the classroom to just be able to be there.
Be present, be in there.
Yeah.
Interesting. You had said, along with your headspace practice that you have daily, that you move your body too. How do you blend your fitness in terms of physical health and mental health? How do you, mom of two, now kind of taking the new mental coaching by storm, right? And that attitude, how do you blend it?
How do I blend it? It varies, honestly. I mix it up all the time. We're getting into warmer weather finally where I am. So my favorite thing to do is to go out and stand up paddleboard, sup. And there's this creek that I go down. It's called 12 Mile Creek. It's off Lake Ontario. And it's like an hour, and it's my favorite thing because, there's nobody else out there. It's like me and the geese and herons and the turtles. Right. And, for me, that's like my blend of physical and mental. I love being out in nature, doing those kind of things, whether it's hiking. I took up skiing when I was almost 40 to, again, find different ways to move and be outside. And so that's my favorite way to blend the physical and the mental for me. Obviously, everyone has different interests. It looks different for different people. You might just want to do a walk. You might just want to, back in the day, I still probably rollerblade here and there. You find different things that you enjoy doing, bike riding, sometimes even just sitting. You can stretch. I haven't done it yet, but what is that practice where you like move super slowly? Tai Chi? It doesn't.
I guess that would be Tai Chi.
Yeah, just finding ways to move, it's not always a workout, but I think movement and mindset are so important together, even if it's not always breaking a sweat and all those kind of things. But I think any kind of movement, and you do that based on your age and your ability level and all those kind of things, is going to have that positive impact.
I agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head with, it doesn't have to be breaking a sweat every single time you sit down. Every moment. It doesn't have to be lifting heavy weight. You should at some point lift something, but you also should do breath work, and you should do some stretching. You hit the nail on the head in the fact of you do kind of a mishmash of everything. And most important, you enjoy what you're doing. I can't tell you how many people that I'll meet, right? Someone that they did this XYZ thing with a coach for years, and then they absolutely hate it. And now they're trying to get back into fitness, but they have this like predisposition for the fact that you're going to hate it now just because you hated it then. You didn't have a passion for what you were doing. For you, it's sup. And I'm never going to not see stand-up paddleboarding as sup. It's just, what do you do? Sup.
It's too long to say.
You got to throw gang signs at sup.
People think I'm so badass when I'm out there too. And I'm like, it's not that hard. I have 2 boards. I'm like, please come try it with me. And you don't have to do it alone too.
Awful.
That's the other thing. Oh, really? You got to come next time you're out this way.
I will absolutely take you up on it, but I can kneel. The minute I stand, the board's like, and I have good balance, a strong core. I'm I'm an athlete. I can't do it to save my life.
I'm an old lady, so you can absolutely do this.
An old lady. Oh, stop. Well, that's awesome.
Find people too. It doesn't have to be done alone. A walk with a friend, taking care of your mind is sometimes chatting and venting or laughing and giggling. There's so many ways that you can be incorporating these things with other people too.
And finding, you hit the nail on the head, finding your community. And a lot of the times, even though we're in the gym, I see so many people, headphones on, they're isolated. And when you walk up to talk to somebody, it's a very abrasive disturbance versus a welcomed community. So you nail on the head. I would agree that bring someone along with you who can't sup.
Yeah.
Something I love to do in terms of these calls is a little bit of a coaching moment in terms of tactical things to take away. Now, you've given us a lot about mental health, but I wanted to tackle a couple physical things with you. And when we spoke last time, you started to go in a little bit, and I wanted you to pause your questions. When we're talking about conquering menopause, getting through that in terms of, I'll say gray area that it is and the amount of resources that are out there, but how to navigate it. Where are you at in your fitness journey through that pre, intro, post? And then what questions come to mind because I like to do this in the sense of a question that you might have, somebody else inevitably has. So if we can answer it now, it's helping somebody else. So where are you at?
Okay, where am I at? I'm, again, part of that hot mess moment. Like, it's, what used to work isn't working anymore. From a physical standpoint, even just trying to integrate more heavy weights, then all of a sudden I feel like compression issues in my back. You're gonna be like, oh God, I can't believe I let her start asking all these questions.
No,
what I
ask.
used to eat, the way I used to eat isn't working the same way. Like I said, physically my joints hurt, a lot of different things. I've read somewhere, and I'd love your take on this. A lot of times we're taught things from how it works for a guy without taking into account. I heard this quote, it's like, women aren't just little men. We're not just a smaller version of guys. Like, we're made up very different. And so kind of retraining how I approach things in a way that are going to be more intuitive to what my 50-something-year-old self needs versus, the 17, 18-year-old version of me that could run and jump and all sorts of stuff. Did I not ask a question? Probably.
No, you did. So you asked my thoughts on it first. And I do,
Okay.
it's a double-edged sword. Yes, I do think women are not little men. However, anatomically, there are pieces of you that are identical, right? So it's like you 100% have to train differently for, if you, at the phases of still having your cycle, you should train depending on where you're at in your phase. You'll be stronger at points. You'll be better at cardio at points. You should be doing more mobility at points. That being said, as you go through, the shift of menopause, you still do need to stay strong through, let's just, be real specific, your quads and your hamstrings and your calves. All of that works the same. How you get there, though, can be different, right? You hit the nail on the head in the fact of you're feeling more compression, you're feeling more joint pain, you're feeling things like that. Inflammation is probably up in you. And realistically, maybe instead of working, I'll just say, I don't know if you do or not, but with a barbell, right? Yeah. Maybe you work with dumbbells. Maybe instead of dumbbells, you work with elastics. Maybe instead of elastics, you work with body weight. Now, I would like to see you lifting something, but you can always progress down. I definitely think the statement of use it or lose it is always real. If you haven't been lifting, this is your wake-up call to do something in terms of lifting. But in terms of regulating hormones, always get them checked because HRT is a real powerful tool for women. Hormone replacement therapy, it's a way for you to regulate that hormone shift. You will sleep better. You will see a more regulated, and I'll just say, like, when I say like emotional state, psychological state, you'll be clearer thinking, you'll be focused more often. I see a lot of women who are very regulated in terms of their hormones as they're going through the transition, get very gray. They get very they're out of it for the day, and they'll sit down and it's just like, you can tell trying to hold a conversation with them, they're a little lost. You can help support the system with HRT, and it's useful, supported by a doctor. It's very common practice. Beyond that, I always recommend to women, and it's part of my protocol, everyone does HIIT, high intensity interval training once a week. Does not matter your level. High intensity can be jumping jacks for a minute until your heart rate gets really high. For the elite athlete, it can be sprinting down the street. I don't care. There's a lot of good science out about the regulation of your hormone levels with that super high stress moment. 10 to 15 minutes tops. That's your workout for the day, as hard as you can. A lot of the times women seem to pull back as they go into menopause. The SUP is wonderful for so many different things, but when we talk hormone regulation, things like that, it doesn't check all the boxes. So we want to talk about balancing that equation, just as the same vein as the woman who does CrossFit in menopause 6 times a week, or Orange Theory, and then complains that she's not losing weight. Well, too much high intensity doesn't allow the system to regulate as well. So it's a balancing act, but that would be the first step off point in terms of your workouts. And obviously things that feel good. You shouldn't hate it. Like, we go through this idea, like your burnout, like that mindset of just work through it. You should just fight through the pain. Not necessarily. There is good pain. There is stress that, my legs are sore today because I squatted really heavy. But like, if your knees are aching for days after, maybe you got to change what you're doing, right? So it's balancing that act.
Right. Is there anything you would, absolutely. No, I love that. Is there anything you would strongly not recommend?
Heavy axial compression, meaning loading the spine direct. Your axis is the spine, and it's an accordion. Basically, there's percentages from 30 years on up. Every decade, our spine becomes more vulnerable, as well as, even if we're not showcasing problems, we could have herniations, bulges, different damage. That it's just not showing itself yet. As we get older by the decade, it's a large percentage, up to like 70 to 80. With that being said, do I want you bar squatting in the 50s? And I'll see so many coaches, more seasoned too, like older coaches, bar squatting and deadlifting and doing these heavy axial compression drills. You can use a dumbbell. You're loading differently if you're holding the dumbbells to the side versus a bar on your spine. And I think it's foolish in the fact of not respecting the instrument that's in front of us, right? A 56-year-old woman has been through the ringer. Her knees are probably a little banged up and she might be having a hip replacement for something or a shoulder tear, but you have to respect that. But at the same time, we should be trying to bulletproof around it. So that would be my first go-to, is watch how you load in terms of what you're putting tension and pressure on. That'd be my,
No, I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. What else with
can I ask a food
kind
question?
of your train? Yeah, that's where I was getting with. If not training, then food. Go ahead.
Protein. I've heard, like I should be doing 30 grams of protein at every meal. Is that fact or fiction?
There 100% is science behind your body needs a specific amount of protein for successful muscular growth and function, a little bit of hormone health, but primarily growth and function. And especially as we age, where we are losing muscle faster than we can say boo, we need every advantage we can get. 0.8 to 1 gram times pound of body mass. If I am 200 pounds for a woman, I want to eat 0.8 to 1 and then do the math. So 160 to 200 grams a day. And you can do the math from there. Yes. Men are 1 to 1.25 times mass. How you intake that is up to you. There's a lot of great evidence in terms of one of my favorite coaching pieces, especially, we'll start to double up coaching, is sleep problems in menopause. A lot of people have sleep. That's why I'm doing the sleep product and the sleep book. Part of it is built around menopausal women, right? I've gotten a lot of good sleep science, sleep studies that I'm pulling different supplements to help. And a big one is, especially in the Americanized diet, we eat carbohydrates way too late in the day. Why would you not pull the carbohydrates out about 3 or 4 o'clock? You're going to go to bed anyways. You don't need the extra sugar in your system. And then it drops your blood sugar, allows you to start to sleep at a much more reasonable time. And you're basically priming your body to rest. Do you eat all your protein in the morning? Do you split it up 30 grams a day? If I have, 4 meals, it's 120 grams. Right? So it's realistically your body weight. You figure out the number you need, and then how you eat it is up to you. I have women who don't like protein shakes. So we've got to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and get all of their protein in those meals.
Right.
I also have women who are like, yeah, sure, throw it at me. So that's 5 meals now that I can chop at their protein count. You can also, it's a 4-2-1 concept. 4 days a week, you eat for a 6-hour window. 2 days a week, you eat. 2 days a week, you get to cheat in that window and eat whatever you want. 1 day a week is a complete fast. Who's to say that's right? I don't preach any intermittent fasting or things like that, especially for women with hormone irregularities. I like consistency, as you said, with mental health. Another great one is 30-30-30. Within 30 minutes of waking up, have 30 grams of protein and have a 30-minute walk. No sunglasses. Get real sunshine in your eyes immediately on waking up. You will shed body fat. I have seen that work time and time again for my clients. And it can be a pound of protein shake, walk out the door. This is before your coffee, before the rest of your supplements. The first thing you're getting in your system is good protein. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, I don't really care how you get there. Just make sure you're eating enough is the short answer.
Yeah. No.
It's a good question because I can't tell you how many people ask me, and it's such a gray question. It's like, there's so many ways to go about it. It's really what fits into your lifestyle.
Right. No, I just was finding out more, because I was always like, I would go run before I did anything else, or I would do my workout before I ate. And I just heard a different podcast I was listening to where they're like, you need to actually be having your protein before you work out. Or at least a little bit of something, or else you're going too far into calorie deficiency and you're storing fat. And I was like, oh gosh, I've been doing this all wrong.
So what's really funny is you'll see a really big trend
of what I thought I knew.
Yep. There's a really big trend of people that are going to wake up in the morning, right? I slept really good. I'm up at 6 a.m. I'm going to drink my black coffee. I'm going to go to Orange Theory and I'm going to go absolutely balls to the walls for an hour and then come home. But then they raise their hand 6 months down the road and they say, well, I'm still a little fluffy, right? I haven't really lost weight. I don't know what's going on. What they don't understand is the fact of your body is a furnace. It's going to forcefully burn calories, whether you put it in there or not. And this is what I don't like about intermittent fasting. And for some people, for the right people, I do believe there is success in intermittent fasting. But I think for another subset of people, and it usually seems to be women and menopausal, seems to all gravitate towards this huge, like high intensity, multiple days in a row, bang, 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 bang. You got to put good food in that system right away. You can still do your high intensity if you want it. But having that 30 grams of protein is going to stop your body from turning around and basically cannibalizing itself. Because what happens is you do all your things, you go work out, break your body down, you're trying to build muscle. But what happens is when you're recovering, you're building up what you just lost. Make sense? Then when we kind of start the next day, you're going to go work out. You haven't put nutrients in enough to recover in the morning and you break down again. There's never an uphill step. So people realistically are just in this cycle of like gain some muscle, lose it all, gain some muscle, lose it all, because they're not appropriately tackling nutrition. So that's why I like your sup. I like it because it's low intensity. You can get good nutrition in there and it's not going to destroy you while still challenging you. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for maybe on a windy day.
Well, that's a whole other thing. Now, I could see you being crazy enough to be out there. I could see
I
it.
would,
Don't
but that's
lie.
what I'm saying. That's going to destroy me, though. It's a lot harder to paddle because you're like sitting in place and you're like still paddling. It's like walking up an escalator.
And you're just sitting there in the house. The house isn't moving. You're just kind of like, well, here we are. Them Duke boys have got themselves in trouble again. So lastly, before we sign off, quick, give us a little plug for the podcast. Best D Life. Tell me a little bit about it, what I'm listening for. Shoot it at me.
Bestie Life with Daniela. It's on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's a blend of solo episodes where I talk about a lot of the principles of either mindset, time planning, or self-care, or I bring in amazing experts like Josh, because in those 8 pillars, even though I'm really great at helping you strategize as far as what they could look like for you, I'm not an expert in movement. I'm not an expert in sleep. I'm not an expert in money. And so I bring in experts from all those different pillars to share how you could maybe start to integrate it, because what works for one person might not work for the other. And so to have that variety and expand your toolkit is really going to help give you the option so that you can always find a way to integrate it, even if every day is going to look different. So you definitely should check it out. They're awesome episodes. Like I said, I've loved meeting all of my guests and I think they're just a lot of fun.
I love that. And the last official question, what do you do? And this is my favorite part of it. What do you do each day to bring some vibrance to your life? And if you could give someone a tactical thing or two to bring vibrance to their life, what is it?
I think definitely knowing what makes you happy. And if you don't know, try and keep trying all sorts of different things. Find what makes you smile. Find those little moments. For me, sometimes it's just even having a silly little dance party. Even if it's by myself, little Rob bass, I can still do that whole intro from memory, even though I don't remember half the other things I need to know in life, Find those things that crack you up, that bring you joy, and, stick with them and do them. Find your people and just kind of take each day as a gift and a blessing. Give yourself grace to not have it all figured out. It doesn't have to be perfect. And, by doing these small micro things, you will start to see those differences.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. So I
Absolutely
do that.
beautiful.
I do dance parties. I got my dogs. I got my husband. Yeah. My kids. Love them.
You're doing pretty well. You're living a pretty good life. I love that.
I
Good
am.
for you.
It's been a journey. I'll definitely say that. But
you had to work to get here. Consistency.
Yeah.
Got her.
And I can help you too. So if you're listening, definitely send me a message, reach out. I would love to help you.
Where do we find you?
How to find me? My website is bestdlife.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest. Send me a message. You can email me. Like I said, I love to answer your questions, love to hear how you're doing and cheer you on and help support you.
Incredible. Daniela, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for stepping in today.
Thanks so much, Josh.
Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
You too. I can't wait to chat again someday.
Deal.